Imagine a world where everything you know is controlled by a small group of people who claim to speak for God. Imagine a world where the only way to learn is to memorize what these people say, and where asking questions can get you in serious trouble. This was the world of Europe in the 1500s, a place where the church and a handful of powerful kings ruled over everyone else. But then, something incredible happened. A new way of thinking began to spread, a way that encouraged people to ask questions, explore, and create. This movement, called the Renaissance, changed everything, and it all started with a few brave individuals who dared to challenge the old ways. By the year 1500, Europe was a patchwork of powerful kingdoms, each ruled by a king or queen. In England, Henry VII had just brought peace after years of war. In France, Louis XII was strengthening his rule. Russia was growing under Ivan III, who was known as Ivan the Great. Scandinavia was united under John I, while Hungary and Poland had their own rulers, Ladislas II and John Albert. Portugal was a rising star under Manuel I, who was sending explorers to discover new lands. Spain, too, was becoming a major power. In 1492, the Spanish completed the Reconquista, the long fight to take back the land from the Moors. Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile, the famous Catholic monarchs, had married to unite their kingdoms and were now working to consolidate their power. But not all of Europe was as united. Germany and Italy were still divided into many small states, each ruled by its own prince or city council. This made it hard for them to compete with the powerful kingdoms around them. The lack of a strong central government meant that these regions were often caught up in disputes over who should rule. Italy, in particular, was a collection of city-states, each with its own government and culture. Germany was ruled by a collection of princes who often fought among themselves. This fragmentation made it difficult for these regions to join the new, more powerful Europe that was forming around them. Despite this division, a new force was beginning to reshape Europe. This force was the growing sense of national identity among the people. For the first time, people were starting to think of themselves as English, French, or Spanish, rather than just subjects of a king. This new sense of national pride was pushing people to work together and build stronger, more unified nations. However, this shift in thinking was not just about politics. It was also about how people saw the world around them. The church, which had been the center of life for centuries, was facing new challenges. People were starting to question the church's teachings and its practices. In the cities, a new class of educated people was emerging, and many of them were angry with the church. They saw the church as corrupt and out of touch with the needs of the people. Reports of misconduct by priests and other church officials were becoming more common, and people were losing faith in the church's ability to lead them. At the same time, a new spirit of curiosity and creativity was sweeping through Europe. This movement, known as the Renaissance, was a rebirth of interest in the classical knowledge of ancient Greece and Rome. People were rediscovering the works of great thinkers like Aristotle, and they were using this knowledge to challenge old ideas and explore new ones. The Renaissance was not just about learning, though. It was also about art, and some of the greatest artists in history were creating their masterpieces during this time. Painters like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael were producing works that were both beautiful and thought-provoking. Their art was not just about pleasing the eye. It was also about exploring the human condition and the nature of the world. The Renaissance was also a time of great scientific discovery. People were starting to ask questions about the natural world and how it worked. They were looking at the stars and wondering if the Earth might not be the center of the universe. They were studying the human body and learning more about how it functioned. This new way of thinking was challenging the old beliefs that had dominated for centuries. It was a time of great change, and it was not always easy for people to adjust. The church, in particular, was slow to accept these new ideas. For centuries, the church had been the source of all knowledge and authority. But now, people were starting to think for themselves, and this was a threat to the church's power. The church tried to suppress these new ideas, but it was a losing battle. The more people learned, the more they wanted to know, and the more they questioned the old ways. The Renaissance was not just a movement of the elite. It was a movement that touched people from all walks of life, Farmers, merchants, and craftsmen were all part of this new way of thinking. They were reading books, attending lectures, and discussing new ideas with their neighbors. This was a time when people were starting to believe that they could shape their own destiny, rather than just following the rules set by the church and the nobility. The impact of the Renaissance was not just cultural, it was also political. The new ideas and the growing sense of national identity were leading to changes in how countries were governed. People were starting to demand more say in how they were ruled, and this was leading to the rise of new political systems. The idea of democracy, where people have a voice in how they are governed, was starting to take root. This was a radical idea, and it would take many more years to fully develop, but the seeds were being planted during the Renaissance. The Renaissance also had a profound impact on the way people saw the world. For centuries, the world had been seen through the lens of the church, with the earth at the center of the universe and God in control of everything. But the new ideas were challenging this view. People were starting to see the world as a place full of possibilities, a place where they could explore and discover new things. This new way of thinking was the foundation for the scientific revolution that would follow, and it would change the way people understood the world forever. In summary, the Renaissance was a turning point in history. It was a time when people started to think for themselves, to question the old ways and to explore new ideas. It was a time of great creativity and discovery, and it laid the foundation for the modern world. The Renaissance was not just about art and science. It was about a fundamental shift in how people saw themselves and their place in the world. It was a time of change, and it was a time of hope. The world was never the same after the Renaissance, and the impact of this movement is still felt today.